pretty big news on one of your signature beats, and that's FBI Director Kash Patel has opened criminal investigations into John Brennan and James Comey for, as you write, quote, offenses related to the Trump-Russia scandal, colloquially known as Russiagate. The opening of criminal probes into the two of the most powerful enforcement chiefs of the Trump era marks the first steps towards consequences for the elaborate and historically unprecedented intelligence fraud that for years consumed American politics. And this follows the ICA scandal of the week before. We're going to get into all of this because, Matt, you make it very intelligible to people who don't follow it as closely as you do. But let's just start with these investigations against Brennan and Comey. Seems like a pretty significant escalation. Tell us what's going on.
So I was able to confirm this morning that they've opened up criminal investigations at the FBI pertaining to Brennan and Comey, and that those were as a result of a criminal referral from the CIA Director John Ratcliffe, who, as you know, last week also released an 8-page report on irregularities with the process of creating the intelligence community assessment of 2017. But it's a significant step forward for anybody who's followed this incredibly annoying story for the last 9 years, because this is now the boomerang coming all the way back. Once upon a time, everybody was waiting for indictments against Donald Trump or people in the Trump family, and now it looks like there's a realistic chance that there may be cases that end up in court against figures like James Comey and John Brennan, and that's good news. Yeah.
And the question now is actually what some of the investigations could turn up. And I think we have this video of, because you sent out a separate note today to Racket subscribers. People should subscribe to Racket.news. That was a clip of Kash Patel on Joe Rogan. The FBI is transferring buildings at the moment, and it's all very bizarre. But this is Kash Patel maybe previewing something when he was talking to Joe Rogan recently. And we can go ahead and roll this clip and get your reaction, Matt.
Mm-hmm. We, just think about this. Me, as the director of the FBI, the former Russiagate guy, when I first got to the Bureau, found a room that Comey and others hid from the world in the Hoover building, full of documents and computer hard drives that no one had ever seen or heard of. Locked the key and hid access and just said, no one's ever going to find this place.
What?
Yeah. So my guys are going through that right now.
What's in there?
A lot of stuff.
Man, this is an amazing clip for Rogan just in the background being like, what?
No, he's like Brad Pitt in True Romance in that scene. It's great.
I love that you had that right at the top of your mind. You're like, oh yeah, it's Brad Pitt.
No, but that was an interesting thing, and everybody is sort of passing that around the internet. But then, as I was calling around this morning, somebody close to one of the investigations told me, he was actually, that was actually a slip, or he did actually refer to this investigation when he was talking to Joe. So that is a true thing. It's not something that people are just saying on the internet. And it's also interesting because it brings in, there are really two parallel tracks to this investigation. I think that's one of the things that's confusing people. There was a huge investigation that was run out of the House Intelligence Committee for years. It began with, oddly enough, Kash Patel working for Devin Nunes, but all that stuff was housed over at Langley for years. It's been locked up there since 2018, and people haven't been able to get at it. Trump tried to declassify it. So that pile is now meeting this other new pile that the Justice Department just found, they say, in the old Hoover building by chance, just because they happen to be moving out of the Hoover building. It's so random. It's like the perfect ending to this idiotic story.
I mean, it really is the only way that you ever end up getting certain classified information is that they just accidentally leave it in a room when they're moving the Hoover building from the Hoover building, because it's the greatest combination of incompetence and secrecy, and that's really the story of the FBI.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, it couldn't. There couldn't be a better resolution to this whole thing. If there's actually damning evidence on any of those documents or hard drives that Kash is referring to, I mean that would be hilariously funny and kind of the perfect resolution to this whole thing. But we don't really know what's on there. We do have a pretty decent idea of what's on the other stuff. And that's probably going to be the predicate for these perjury / conspiracy investigations that they're pursuing.
Yeah, that's one of the things I thought you did a really good job of running down, and that's one of the questions I have for you right now is what, it's hard for me to believe that they open these investigations, Kash Patel opens these investigations, and they don't end up in charges against Brennan and Comey, particularly for perjury over whether or not the Steele dossier was involved in this ICA that became big news last week because the CIA under Director John Ratcliffe, who is very well regarded in the MAGA world and is close to Donald Trump, frankly, released and Matt, what was the document formally? It was like a memo.
Yeah, it was called. It had some bizarre name like Tradecraft Shortcomings of something. It was a very forgettable title. But, it got kind of lukewarm reviews among hardcore Russiagate followers and even among people who had conducted the original House Intelligence Committee investigation. You saw Rick Crawford from the Intel Committee talking about how the CIA was attempting to whitewash everything that had happened. He sent angry letter to Trump about that. But I think that was actually just a misunderstanding. It appears, from what I hear today, it appears that that Ratcliffe wrote that very short 8-page thing in a way that was specifically crafted to give, in a narrow way, to give Kash a way to open up some perjury investigations, and then everything else can come in afterwards. But that document is not the be-all, end-all of everything that they found. It's designed for utilitarian purpose.
So that's a really important point, because the big picture, zooming out of all of this, is whether or not they said the Steele dossier was sort of immaterial to opening up the Trump-Russia investigation when they did, and they were passing along what's called an ICA internally. And so there's a big fight over basically whether or not they used this opposition research to target a political opponent, and then the sitting president of the United States. It's one of the most undemocratic schemes that we've seen happening. And the Peter Strzok text message about an insurance policy basically tells you all you need to know about their mentality here. But I want to put two headlines up on the screen. This is F2. This is the Politico headline about the Ratcliffe memo, which said, CIA review of 2016 Russian election probe finds no major flaws, which, Matt, you wrote about also. Apparently, I hadn't seen this, but Ken Delanian, also known informally as Fusion Ken, because of his obvious connections to Fusion GPS, which was peddling all this opposition research. He went on MSNBC and said the Ratcliffe report didn't show Brennan had done any wrongdoing, let alone a crime. And you kind of fisked this. Let's put the Racket headline. This is F3 up on the screen. But at the same time, there's something interesting about Politico reporting that essentially this was a letdown, that there wasn't much in it, that it almost like didn't accuse anybody of wrongdoing, because that's kind of what the people you were talking about said. Your reporting suggests that actually it was maybe the first step into investigating perjury regarded to the Steele dossier. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's right. But by itself, the Ratcliffe report is still pretty bad, and it also moves the ball forward significantly. There were some things. I mean, I spent a month on this question last year in February working with Michael Schellenberger on the question of what was in that House Intelligence Committee report. And it was very similar to the WMD story. Essentially, Brennan, Comey, and the NSA, when they were putting together the intelligence community assessment that came out in the first week of 2017, you have to remember that Russiagate at that point had stalled out. All the various investigations had finished. There had been a story in Mother Jones.
It's David Corn.
By David Corn suggesting that the Russians had blackmail material on Donald Trump, and that didn't go anywhere. So there was nothing left. The Russiagate was about to be kind of a non-story. And then they dropped, Barack Obama commissioned this report. And the only way that they could say in the report that Russia specifically interfered to help Donald Trump was if they brought in material from the Steele dossier, because they didn't have a source on this. So that's how this whole thing was put together. That's what's in the Ratcliffe report is essentially like a documentary confirmation that John Brennan overrode his internal controls. They told him that they shouldn't use this stuff, that it didn't meet even minimal standards of anything. And, he said, no, and there's a written thing by him saying, no, I think it warrants, in consideration. And the reason that's relevant is because he's on the record saying otherwise in testimony. So there's your case right there, if you want to make a perjury case.
Yeah, there's such circling back to that video of Kash Patel and Rogan, you also made a good point about this. And I'm curious to hear more of what you think, because you know the internal machinations of the media really well, and how government tries to spin reporters and the position that it puts reporters in when they're giving newsworthy information, even if it's also clearly trying to get ahead of something or to disrupt a bad news cycle. And so the obvious connection that a lot of people have made is this is happening amidst the fallout over Jeffrey Epstein, basically the DOJ basically like closing the case on the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, saying there's no more disclosures coming from us, nothing to see here, no incriminating client list, no credible evidence of a blackmail operation. It's all very ridiculous. But then we hear that from the FBI, they're opening this long-awaited investigation into two of the major villains of the Trump era, John Brennan and James Comey. So your point, and flesh this out for us a little bit, is that clearly this was already percolating according to your sources when Kash Patel went on Joe Rogan's show. So maybe is it possible that the story that I think was originally given to Fox News, the exclusive on this, was Epstein related, but the actual investigations themselves maybe weren't?
Yeah, what I was told is that the investigation's been going on for months. I don't know what the deal is with how the Fox story came out, but I do know that there were rumors flying all over the conservative media world this weekend that something about Russiagate, much bigger than the Ratcliffe report, was about to come out. So yeah, it's possible that's politically related, that, maybe the timing on the announcement of an investigation, that could be related to the Epstein fallout. But there's no question that we're working on this, and that they have been working on this. I mean, this is the reason that Kash Patel was named FBI director. I mean, this is the case that put him in that office, and it would be an enormous shock if they weren't working on this from day one.